A lot of guys spend years trying to hide traits they think make them less attractive. But what if some of those traits are actually what draws people in? In this video, you're going to discover 6 qualities that people often call flaws. But when you understand them the right way, they can actually radiate confidence, maturity, and authenticity. And the first one is probably going to challenge everything you thought you knew about attraction. Topic 1. He doesn't need everyone to like him. The unattractive quality, coming across as reserved, selective, or even a little indifferent. A lot of guys believe they need everyone's approval to be seen as attractive. They bend over backwards to please people, avoid disagreeing, and try to seem interesting 24/7. But here's the weird paradox. The more someone chases approval, the less confident they actually come across. More often than not, it's the guy who doesn't feel that constant need to please who ends up sparking more curiosity and respect. This has nothing to do with being arrogant or cold toward people. The difference comes down to emotional independence. A secure man can be polite, stick to his own opinions, and not change who he is just to be liked. Picture someone who's part of a conversation without fighting for attention, who speaks up when he actually has something worth saying, and who's totally fine even when he's not the center of attention. That kind of energy screams authenticity, and authenticity is way more attractive than putting on a show. In practice, this means building a life that doesn't depend on other people's approval to make sense. Having your own goals, hobbies, friendships, and values makes confidence feel natural instead of rehearsed. Interestingly, there's another trait a lot of men also try to hide out of fear of seeming boring, when it can actually do the exact opposite. And that's exactly what we're getting into next. Topic 2. He's not the most talkative man in the room. The unattractive quality, being quiet or not saying much. A lot of people assume the most charismatic guy is always the one talking the most. But in reality, talking nonstop doesn't always build connection. A man who knows how to listen, pays attention to what's being said, and picks his words carefully usually comes across as calm and in control. Instead of competing for attention, he makes people feel like they're actually being heard. Think about a date or a hangout with friends. While some people are scrambling to fill every second of silence, this guy asks genuine questions, listens with real interest, and answers straight to the point. That doesn't mean he's shy or lacks personality. Quite the opposite. It shows he doesn't feel the need to prove his worth every 5 seconds. That calm, grounded presence tends to leave a way stronger impression than a conversation packed with exaggeration. Of course, silence on its own doesn't create attraction. The difference is in the intention behind it. When someone stays quiet out of insecurity, people can feel it. But when the silence comes from confidence, it communicates maturity and emotional balance. And there's another quality a lot of men mistake for disinterest, when it could actually make them even more attractive. That's exactly what we're covering next. Topic 3. He doesn't chase constant validation. The unattractive quality, not chasing approval, texts, or attention all the time. Plenty of guys believe showing interest means being available 24/7. They text back instantly, cancel their own plans, and put the other person at the center of their entire routine. The problem is, when all your energy goes into winning someone over, it starts to look like your own life took a back seat, and that rarely comes across as confident. Men who spark real interest usually have a life that keeps going whether or not a relationship is in the picture. They work out, they hang with friends, build hobbies, and chase their own goals, not as some game to seem uninterested, but because that's genuinely who they are. When they reply to a text later or prioritize something important, it's not about creating mystery. It's because their identity doesn't revolve around someone else's approval. That kind of emotional independence sends a powerful message. My happiness doesn't depend on you, but I'd love to share my life with you. That shift completely changes the dynamic of a relationship because it removes any sense of neediness and opens the door to something more genuine. And before we get into the next quality, a lot of guys hide for no good reason. Here's a quick word that could make a real difference for this channel: If you're vibing with this kind of content and want to see more explanations grounded in psychology, behavior, and personal growth for men, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Our goal right now is to hit 1,000 subscribers, and your support makes all the difference in helping us keep making deeper, more useful videos. Now let's get into one of the most misunderstood qualities on this list. Topic 4. He looks imperfect and doesn't hide it. The unattractive quality, not being perfectly good-looking or flawless. We live in a time where a lot of guys think they need the perfect face, the perfect body, and a flawless style to be seen as attractive. But reality usually paints a very different picture. Small imperfections, when paired with confidence, stop being a problem and start radiating authenticity. After all, someone who's comfortable in his own skin rarely looks like he's trying too hard to impress anyone. That doesn't mean ditching self-care, but it does mean understanding that confidence outweighs perfection by a mile. A guy who dresses well, carries good posture, and feels at ease with his own features usually leaves a much stronger impression than someone obsessed with hiding every little detail of his face or body. The way he sees himself directly shapes the way others see him too. At the end of the day, most women aren't looking for a flawless guy. They're looking for someone who handles his flaws with maturity and ease. That quiet kind of confidence tends to stand out way more than any beauty standard pushed by social media. And there's another trait a lot of people consider a flaw, when it might actually be one of the biggest signs of self-esteem out there. And that's exactly what we're talking about next. Topic 5. He's comfortable saying no. The unattractive quality, being firm, setting boundaries, and not always pleasing everyone. A lot of men grew up believing that being seen as nice meant saying yes to everything. They avoid conflict, agree to any request, and put other people's needs first, always. The problem is, spending your life trying to please everyone can come across as a lack of conviction. A man who respects his own boundaries usually earns way more respect than one who never sets any. That doesn't mean being rude or hard to deal with. It means knowing how to say no when something goes against your values, your time, or your goals. Picture someone turning down an invite because he already had something important planned, without making up excuses or feeling guilty about it. That attitude shows he stands by his word and doesn't change course just to avoid upsetting someone. In practice, setting healthy boundaries shows emotional maturity and strengthens any kind of relationship, whether it's romantic, professional, or between friends. Secure people understand that respect doesn't come from pleasing everyone all the time. It comes from acting with consistency. And there's one last quality that ties everything together, showing why some guys just naturally seem interesting without even trying, and it wraps up this list in a pretty surprising way. Topic 6. He has a life that doesn't revolve around dating the unattractive quality, not always being available. One of the biggest differences between a guy who comes across as needy and a guy who sparks real interest comes down to how he runs his own life. When someone has goals, hobbies, friendships, and a routine that actually means something to him, he doesn't feel the need to be available around the clock. That's not a lack of interest. It just shows that his happiness doesn't hinge on being in a relationship. Guys who live their lives trying to impress someone end up giving off the vibe that they don't really have an identity of their own. Meanwhile, the ones who invest in their career, take care of their health, learn new skills, or spend time with the people who matter naturally become more interesting. They don't need to convince anyone of their worth, because their life is already proving it every single day. In the end, maybe the biggest irony is this. A lot of the qualities people label as unattractive stop being flaws the moment they're paired with confidence, purpose, and authenticity. Real attraction almost never comes from trying to look perfect. It comes from being a man who's secure in who he is and in the life he's chosen to build. Conclusion. If there's one takeaway worth holding on to from this video, it's that real attractiveness doesn't come from looking perfect. It comes from developing qualities that reflect confidence, authenticity, and purpose. Instead of burning energy trying to fit other people's expectations, maybe the smarter move is investing in who you're becoming. In the long run, That tends to matter a lot more than any technique or look ever could. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 6 qualities stood out to you the most? Is there another trait people often write off as unattractive that you actually think helps a man stand out? Share your take in the comments. Your perspective might just help another guy going through the exact same thing. And if this video gave you a fresh perspective on relationships and male psychology, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We're building a community for men who want to grow through knowledge, and our goal is to hit 1,000 subscribers. Your support makes all the difference in letting us keep bringing you deeper, more valuable content.